New York Governor Cuomo has announced that Broadway will be reopening at 100% capacity on September 14th. But what does that mean for the rest of the theater industry in the middle of this pandemic? My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call.
Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour.
What is up, my friends, and welcome back to Half Hour Call. Today I was able to sit down with Lauren Class Schneider, who is a member of the Broadway League and the founder of Arts and Science. Arts and Science offers COVID Compliance Officer certification courses that are specifically focused on theater production and live events. Lauren and I had a conversation about what it takes to produce theater in a pandemic and what it means to make art in the context of this global event that we're all living through. All right, well, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining me today. I'm excited to get to talk to you all about where we stand in terms of pandemic safety and live theater.
Absolutely. And I think we're standing in a great place. We've learned so much. Science has given us so much. And needless to say, we as an industry are ready.
Speaking of the industry, could you give us a little bit of background about your place in the industry, like what you've done and how it brought you here?
I'm what's known as a mutt or a hyphenate. My very first paying job was as a lifeguard. I was 16 years old. And so I guess I started in the concept of health and safety early in my career. And then my second was teaching middle school theater and speech. Then pursued a career in New York as a legitimate theater stage manager. I discovered sometime into that I'm more of a builder than a maintainer, and found myself on my first long run realizing that every Monday night I was volunteering at Avery Fisher, Alice Tully, Carnegie Hall, because one night star-studded one-offs are really where I found where I belonged and where I was the best. And that all led to extraordinary opportunities directing and producing corporate and civic events, creating plays for ultimately pharmaceutical companies that were not branded with the pharmaceutical's name, but presented as public service announcements for medical conferences. And I feel like that marriage has always been a little bit a part of my career, on top of the fact that, I do things like New Year's Eve in Times Square and the Grammy Awards and the Tony Awards.
So what is a certified COVID compliance officer and why are they important to a safe production?
At Arts and Science, the class oriented towards theater production, COVID compliance, certificate for theater production, as well as the safety elements. We struggle with the vocabulary because of how new it is. Mm-hmm. And our sister industries created COVID compliance officer relatively early in the pandemic. They were back at work on a small scale, but nonetheless back in July, August. Mm-hmm. And the need created the name, a standalone position. It's not an and. That's the position. It's time consuming. It requires an enormous amount of focus. It takes the energy, the focus, and the concentration for someone like a stage manager. You can't effectively be the COVID compliance officer to protect your company and at the same time be sure that you're giving 5-minute breaks at an hour or 10-minute breaks at an hour and a half. It's just not feasible.
I've heard a couple of places the phrase stage managers make great COVID compliance officers, but not at the same time as being stage managers.
I love that. And there's a lot of reasons why. The personality, the disposition of a stage manager. If stage managers ran the world, our world would be a better place. There's no question about it. When it comes to organization, logistics, management, and incredible abilities to work with people. So no matter how gorgeous your spreadsheet is, at the end of the day, we are people working with people. And this is so much about people's behavior. And I don't think that there's any better person in our theater industry that's well suited for this job than stage managers. So the COVID compliance officer regardless of their title, like what we call them. And you're right, there are those many names, and I'm hearing more and more the more I do this. And language aside, we want to talk about the responsibility. And in conjunction with a medical professional that theater has probably engaged with, they are really at the helm of helping design whatever the protocols are. They're going to work very closely with the general manager, producer. That CCO is really at the helm of that department, looking to explore with their colleagues options, opportunities, and protocols for risk mitigation.
To kind of translate the role of the COVID compliance officer into our traditional theater world, it sounds like from what you're saying that the medical professional is like the director who's creating the artistic vision for the show or the safety plan for the show. And then the COVID compliance officer is like the stage manager who's maintaining that once the director's gone and not there every day. Would that be accurate?
And that's not only so lovely, I'm going to use it. It's a great way to think about it, because CCOs, the way we're talking about them for theater, are not medical professionals. Part of what's exciting about all of this is that it's taking place in every part of the country, in every part of the world. So what might be true in Akron, Ohio in September of 2021 won't be true in Columbia, Missouri during that same time, and neither will be true anymore for either city in January 2022.
As things start to reopen, what kinds of changes can audience members and maybe even cast and crew expect to see as we kind of open things up?
One of the things I think we want to really keep in mind is that change is not necessarily a bad thing. So the change in coming back is part of that. We're coming back. Many shows already have. And we become accustomed to, if it's appropriate in that theater and their medical advisor has advised it, and for their own theater goers' comfort, they think it's important. It might be temperature checks when you come into the theater. It might be an infrared camera that takes your temperature before you even cross the threshold and pass on your ticket. It may be more paperless transactions. Not that the disease is transmitted through surfaces the way that we had initially thought, but there's a little bit of psychological consideration to how we feel about safety, in addition to what actually is a risk mitigation technique. We're going to know, but we're not going to see new air filtration systems inside the theaters, new HVAC systems. Air is going to need to continually circulate and not re-breathe the same air that's been in the room. We're of course going to continue to see mask wearing, and on the stage itself, we're going to see a variety of things. We're going to see everything from casts that might physically, literally be living all in the same house in some sort of very tight, strict bubble, appearing on the stage, potentially all having been vaccinated and continuing being tested. They may appear on the stage exactly like they did pre-pandemic, but maybe not. We may see more times where actors are further apart. We may see unique staging with plexiglass in front of an actor, moving it around on casters. We're gonna see creative people having the opportunity to be even more creative.
It sounds a lot like when stage managers think about making a run sheet. You know, you think through every single process, every single step. What is the least amount of steps you need to accomplish to get this thing done? It can seem daunting because it's a completely new thing, but it seems like it's very much within the wheelhouse of theater makers to adapt to these challenges.
For theater makers, and particularly stage managers, another area where stage managers are brilliant is breaking the big piece of the puzzle into smaller, manageable pieces.
Speaking of stage managers, one of the guests in the COVID compliance course was Bonnie, the production stage manager for Six. And one of my favorite parts was showing photos of Six before and Six after.
Yeah, so Bonnie is able to show the photos from the New York production, scheduled to open the night of the shutdown. Lucy Moss, the director, has already been able to restage the show in the West End. And it's not really after the pandemic, it's during the pandemic. And what we want to keep in mind is that we're going to be making theater, creating theater, presenting theater, and going to the theater during the pandemic. So while we're during it, it's things like that fabulous band of, I think it's 5 musicians that are staged upstage of the Queens. And they're behind plexi because they're playing instruments and they're stationary. Unlike the Queens, who aren't playing instruments and they're moving around the whole time. So working with their medical professionals in London, they established reasons and protocols that worked within the context of their show. And, 6 is the most unique example of that opening night scheduled and already having the London run. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think another aspect that we're going to start wondering is, how do we communicate to the audience that the protocols that are being followed on stage don't need you to be fearful for the actor's safety? Because our audiences really adore the actors and they care about their safety and they don't want to see them come into harm's way. Yeah, they want the thrill, but they also want to know that nobody's going to get sick. There will be, how does each different show or theater or company communicate to their audience? Sort of like, no animals were harmed in the filming of this film. It's no actors are going to be harmed in the staging of this show.
It just popped into my head. You know how donors at nonprofit theaters will name a theater after, what if they named an HVAC system after a high donor?
Absolutely. And that's going to be the higher priced ticket item.
Right.
Purell as an expendable, that's going to get pricey also. On top of the fact that individuals have to be trained. Mm-hmm. We don't just get hatched knowing all of this stuff. So there's going to be a big element going into education. And rooms are going to need to be bigger. Rehearsal spaces are going to need to be bigger. It also takes more time. It takes longer to do a load in when you go by these protocols. It takes longer to get people into the theater. Everything just takes more time. And we know with things taking more time, they cost more money. So budgets are going to be very much adjusted to accommodate for risk mitigation. And that's going to be first and foremost.
You mentioned how important education is, which I think is a beautiful segue to talk about Arts and Science, the certification course, which I believe is the first one that was geared towards live events and theatrical production. Is that correct?
It's the first and only. I wanted to make it for our people. It's made for our people. And the medical doctor in association with it, his name is Dr. Bill Daly. He and I first got to work together in 2006. And he was the medical director for a couple of different particular drugs. That company is the one that sponsored these various plays that my team created to present at medical conferences. So since 2006, he and I have been at the marriage of arts and science. And imagine sitting with this brilliant medical doc going through the script. And I want the script to be dramatic, but I also, of course, want to be sure that it's telling the story about, the recovery from a heart attack in a way that's medically correct. And those script meetings with Bill were all about finding the balance between being sure that it's the appropriate medical language, while at the same time getting that emotional connection to the actors and to the characters that were being presented. Having Arts and Science create the COVID compliance officer and safety course for theater production, it was really a way to just give a public service and public health kind of gift to our community so that we're able to translate CDC guidelines into language and practicality that works for what's done in production and what works for what's done front of house.
Yeah, and translating those CDC guidelines is quite a challenge. I remember in the beginning of all this, Kate Schindel, the president of Actors Equity Association, kept saying in press conferences and things, this is the only profession, acting is the only profession in the world where kissing your coworker is not only encouraged, it's sometimes part of the job description. And I think that's such a good, succinct way to be like, okay, this has different challenges than going to a grocery store. There are the same concerns, but it's definitely needs to be approached very differently.
Completely. There's nothing about making theater that's the same as any other business or any other industry. Film and TV have some components that are similar. And in the class, we refer to our sister industries. They came back early. It was very satisfying to become an educated consumer, as it were, and walking into those environments as a DGA stage manager, knowing more about risk mitigation. In creating arts and science in the class specifically for theater production, we acknowledge and honor and are grateful to the sister industries that led the way. And now it was my job to adapt and make it personal to exactly what our needs and requirements are.
As we finally get towards the light at the end of the tunnel, what's something that you hope gets taken from all of this as kind of a lesson for the entire theater industry moving forward?
A continued appreciation of the art form, recognition and support that we really want to support arts education in the schools, that creativity is vital to solving science problems. Creativity is vital in the context of the pandemic and such severe isolation to have entertainment come our way. We wouldn't have been able to survive the isolation if we didn't have these incredible storytellers giving us something to hang on to, whether it be in a Zoom room, on our TV screens. It doesn't matter what the delivery form was. And without continuing to be aggressive about keeping the arts in the schools, we don't help create problem solvers, and we don't help create creative people that are able to give humans what's so needed.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for taking the time to chat all about reopening the theater industry and making sure people stay safe. And as a special gift to our half-hour call viewers, Lauren has been so kind as to create a coupon code for the Arts and Science live events COVID Compliance Officer Certification course. Link in the description below. The coupon code is half hour, all caps, no space. It's on your screen now. And that is good through the end of May. So be sure to check it out. I really enjoyed the course. I took it last night. I think what's important to mention is that that is a snapshot in time, right? That course is a snapshot in time. So it's really important after you take it to stay up to date on the latest science and the latest developments in the pandemic.
Thank you, Kent. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.
Find the perfect gift for the stage manager in your life at the Half Hour Call store. Now with free shipping on all domestic orders. New products added frequently. Visit KentJamesCollins.com/store to shop now.